As guests, we humbly extend our gratitude to the Ramaytush Ohlone elders and community. We recognize that we benefit from living and working on their traditional homeland, and we affirm their sovereign rights as First Peoples. As the original stewards of this land, the Ramaytush Ohlone understand that the interconnectedness of all things and the importance of maintaining harmony with nature. Likewise, Pacifica School District commits to teaching our school community how to be responsible stewards of this land.
Thank you. And Kelly, would you please take the roll call?
Trustee Bradall.
Here.
Trustee Brocchini is unable to join us tonight. Trustee Doggett.
Here.
Trustee Villalobos.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay. The district digitally records the audio and video portions of the meetings. All recordings are kept in the superintendent's office for 30 days and are available during that time period for inspection by members of the public on district equipment without charge. Speakers wishing to address the board on agenda or non-agenda items, please submit your first and last name and the agenda item you wish to speak on in the Q&A area of the webinar. Please do not submit comments or questions in the Q&A area. You will be called to address the board. Your microphone will be unmuted and you may speak up to 3 minutes. After you have spoken, your microphone will be muted. Okay, approval of the minutes. Okay, so approval of the minutes for the meeting of June 30th, 2021, regular meeting. Are there any questions? I'll go through. Trustee Villalobos?
No questions.
Trustee Doggett?
No questions.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the minutes of June 30th, 2021, regular board meeting?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Do I have
I
a
will second.
Okay, and Kelly, can you take the roll call vote?
Trustee Bradall.
Yes.
Trustee Doggett.
Yes.
Trustee Villalobos.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes 3-0.
Okay, approval of the agenda and consent agenda. All items on the consent agenda will be approved with one motion, which is not debatable and which requires a unanimous vote for passage. If any member of the board, the superintendent, or the public so requests, any item shall be removed from this section and placed on the regular order of business following approval of the consent agenda. Are there any questions regarding the approval of the agenda and the consent agenda? Trustee Villalobos?
No questions.
Okay. Trustee Doggett?
No questions.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the agenda and consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda and consent agenda.
And do I have
I
a
will
second?
second.
Okay, Kelly, can you take the roll call vote?
Trustee Bradall.
Yes.
Trustee Doggett.
Yes.
Trustee Villalobos.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes 3-0.
Okay, communications. Speakers wishing to address the board on agenda items or non-agenda items, please submit your first and last name and the agenda item you wish to speak on in the Q&A area of the webinar. Please do not submit comments or questions in the Q&A area. You will be called to address the board. Your microphone will be unmuted and you may speak up to 3 minutes. After you have spoken, your microphone will be muted. LSEA?
I am promoting Jonathan Harris because he's going to speak on behalf of LSEA, and there he is right there, and he does not have a time limit. Mr. Harris?
Thank you, Heather. So my name's Jonathan Harris. I am on the negotiating team for LSEA, and I'm going to be making comments for this evening. I wanted to, first of all, welcome you all back to our year is started. I know a lot of the teachers have been back this week, busily working in their classrooms. I'm so sorry. Laverne can probably hear that from her house. Sorry, Laverne. I would just like to say that just kind of make comment that this is our third school year of working in COVID, and LSEA is very pleased with our coordination with the district throughout COVID. You know, as always, there are a few disagreements here and there, but we have felt very supported by this board and by Dr. Olson in our efforts to keep everybody safe here in Pacifica in the schools. Looking at other districts, we're very pleased at how well we have maintained, actually not only maintained, but improved our relationship throughout this pandemic and crisis. So a big thank you to you all for that. We hope to continue that this year. And with that comes the understanding that all of us have been through, and I mean all of us in the greater sense, a fairly traumatic time over the last couple of years with COVID. And we've done a very nice job of reacting and trying to keep people safe in a thoughtful and respectful way. We respectfully request, and we did speak with Dr. Olson about this the other day in a meeting and felt very heard and appreciate that as well, that the district would consider please purchasing air purifiers for the school, each of the classrooms in the school district. This is something that has been done by several other school districts nearby. I know San Francisco Unified for one. There's been some varying information about air purifiers. We realize that they don't work at their optimum when we keep our doors and windows open. However, they still do purify the air better than it would be with just the doors and windows open. We also foresee that we will have, and this isn't really a doubt, we will be having some smoke days. And I realize there's a plan in place for that, but we will need to close our doors and windows before any of the plan would require that we would cancel school. So in just an effort to keep us all safe, especially looking at classrooms with younger students that are not vaccinated, this seems like a reasonable approach. I know that I was at our PTO board meeting yesterday for Ocean Shore, and there was a little bit of confusion as to whether we were asked whether PTOs could purchase air purifiers. I know that last year the district did. They were willing to purchase air purifiers, and we were in smaller groups. This year we will be luckily back in full class, I'm very happy to say. And because of that, we hope that we could stay extra safe by purchasing those for our classrooms. So that is a request from LSEA. Another request from LSEA is that we make some more firm language to make sure that students are keeping masks on outside. Of course, not while they're eating. We understand that that is something that can't happen, but we do hope that we could keep a very consistent and firm message that would keep students keeping masks on outside whenever possible. We just think that the consistency of a message throughout the district would help us all in keeping safe as numbers climb. So we thank you for your support. We really look forward to working with the district again in making a really successful and full class school year, which I'm thrilled to say. I will say too that with the air purifiers and with the masks, our hope always is to keep our kids in school and our teachers and kids, of course, safe. So thank you all very much, and have a wonderful school year.
Okay, thank you. And CSEA? Did Nicole want to speak this today? You're muted, Heather, if you're Dr. Olson.
Okay, here comes Nicole. Hi.
Hello, thank you very much. Welcome back. I think Jonathan said also what CSEA would like to say, and that we have really enjoyed working with this board and with the district. The support that you've helped us with has been great. I know that a lot of CSEA members had a much better summer with a wage increase and a stipend, and that made things very nice.
Can't hear you, Nicole. You lost your sound. And now you're freezing.
6 out of 3 child nutrition workers. But we do have coverage for the other 3 for now, but we hope to hire 3 more. We've hired a library media tech. We've hired a custodian. We have a van driver that we've just hired. So we've been moving forward in those ways. ESY, I personally worked ESY and I drove the van and it was great. You know, we had 4 really good weeks. There was 1 setback in 1 class. So we were able to let those students stay home and then bring them back for an additional 6 days. And so that went really well as well. Let's see. I'll tell you that I personally am very excited to start the school year, and I think a lot of CSEA members are very excited to start the school year. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And that's all I have. Let's do this. I don't know what it looks like, but we'll be good. We're going to be fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And people wishing to address the board. We have an Amy Lynn. Okay, so that's going to be answered later in the, you're muted, Dr. Olson. Okay.
Sorry. I'm gonna, Miss Lynn's sound is now on, and she has 3 minutes to speak. Let's make sure that we can hear her. There we go.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
We can, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, great. Thank you for having me on. So I'm sure this is not a new topic, and I really appreciate how Jefferson Unified has worked with Pacifica to help closer align the beginning and ending of the high schools and the elementary and middle school. And I had thought that the school vacations were always aligned or had recently been aligned. So I was surprised to see, I understand there's just like a 2 to 3 day discrepancy over the winter break, but the spring breaks, Jefferson Unified is April 4th to the 8th, and Pacifica is April 18th through the 22nd. What I'm wondering is just to help me understand, because I feel, you know, at some point, if parents don't just have an only child or twins, at some point they're going to have students in these 2 different districts, and I'm not understanding a benefit to teachers or kids or families or even the school district as a whole, because from what I understand, even if an absence is excused, the school district loses money each day. And I feel like I'm probably not the only one who might choose to take my child out of school for a short while so that we can all be together. I think it's very tricky also for working parents. So it's more of helping me to get an understanding of why they aren't aligned and to see if there are any drawbacks to getting them aligned.
Is that it?
Yeah, and I mean, well, I guess I think that I know that I'm definitely not alone, because I have friends that have high school students and others in this same situation. And from what I understand, questions won't be answered during this time, but I want to know, what is the process? Well, I guess that's another question, but what is the process of you know, parents sharing something and then getting feedback?
So in a board meeting, what we will do is we will take your question, and the staff member that is most closely aligned will reach out to you and most likely answer your questions.
Okay, that would be great.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, and I'm not seeing anyone else from the public with public comment at all.
correct.
Okay, we'll go into correspondence. Dr. Olson.
I do not have any correspondence.
Okay, board superintendent communications. Trustee Villalobos.
I'm just going to start fresh for the school year, and I don't have any communications, but just welcome back, everybody.
Okay, Trustee Doggett.
I'm going to say the same. I don't have any communications, but I wanted to welcome everyone back to school. I want everybody to have a safe school year. We are still in a pandemic, so I want everybody to keep that in the back of your minds. I'm happy that many people got vaccinated, but I just want to make sure that we stay safe, we wear our mask, and we, make it through this pandemic. So hang in there, everyone, please.
Okay, and all I had right now was the San Mateo County reinstated the elected officials call yesterday, which is not a good thing that we're back to that again, but it's all the elected officials in San Mateo County just going over the state of the situation. Hopefully we'll be able to see things getting better instead of worse. And then today was the Jefferson Elementary School District's workforce housing groundbreaking, and they're started today on 52 units up in Daly City. And they right on the top of a hill with what on a not foggy day would probably be a really beautiful view. Okay, and Dr. Olson?
I would just like to start off by introducing our two newest cabinet members. Dr. Carla Chavez Torres is our Director of HR. Dr. John Bartfield is our Director of Student Services and Special Education. And then Will Lucy is not new, but is the Director of Education Services, and Josie Peterson is the Chief Business Official. These four people have been working extremely hard getting ready for school. And as you'll see from the presentation tonight, things continue to change. So we're really glad to have a great team, and as represented by both the leadership of LSEA and CSEA, people are excited about a full return to school, and really thankful for the relationship of figuring these hard things out together. So looking forward to it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, district business, district goals. The district values the goals provided in our local control accountability plan and strategic plan. All of our district board agenda items are tied to these goals. One or more goals are listed on the description of each board agenda item. The details for each of these district goals can be accessed on our district website at www.pacificasd.org. Okay, return to school update. Dr. Olson.
Okay, Mr. Lucy, would you kindly put the presentation in the screen? So I will get started while we're waiting for that. And just today, California, the public health officer of the state of California issued, and I'll talk a little bit about this a little bit later, but a mandate that that we need to document the vaccination status of all adults that work in a school, paid and unpaid. So that would include school volunteers. We had every intention of doing that. That was in our plans. There were just some minor changes that I'll talk about that. So I have added some additional slides. And in a virtual world, it's actually very easy and legal to do this, because you just have to make sure that everyone has equal access to that. So next slide, please, Will. So we believe that most students will be returning to in-person learning, that there is no longer distance learning. The provisions for that in the law have expired. What the state of California has permitted, though, is that students that are not yet ready to return may participate in independent study. An independent study in every district looks a little bit different, but we are going to run that independent study through our award-winning homeschool program. We have to make a few tweaks with it to comply with that law, AB 130. But if families are not yet ready to return, that would be a very good option for them. So I did, the sign up will go out tonight. I actually was waiting because of the minor tweaks that we're going to make may provide some relief to some parents that are nervous to return to school. So I want to just make sure that they have that information, and then we'll send the sign up out for that today. So next slide, please. So as Jonathan Harris alluded to, communication is going to matter a lot this year, and we'll talk a little bit later about the nexus of when we have COVID and wildfire. So primarily, I communicate as needed, at least twice a month via an update to families, primarily through emails. We can use phone calls in an emergency. It's linked to our phone, to parents' phone numbers. But I also want to invite all parents to opt in to receiving text messages. You will never receive a text message that the PTO meeting is on Monday. It really is only for the most urgent and emergency situations, like there's a flood at the school. So please consider signing up for that, and you just opt right into that. As we roll out the beginning of school, after things stabilize, probably toward the end of the first week of school, we're going to roll out our new website layout. It's still through Cyber School, but we have a new layout that we've been working on, and we're really excited, and hopefully we'll make things a little bit easier to find. In terms of the guidance, one place that all educators look is the San Mateo County Office of Education Pandemic Recovery Framework. From San Mateo County Office of Ed. We will link that onto our website so that people can take a look at that. That's really intended for an educational audience, not necessarily a parent audience. But what San Mateo County has done really well this period of time is we all waited for CDC's guidance, then CDPH lined up their guidance or made the differences in California Department of Health. And then the county incorporated that. So I know that in the spring, one of the things that was the most frustrating were when it was competing messages, but we're seeing that line up much more. We are sometimes seeing California be more stringent about things, but they're typically not in disagreement. Next slide, please. So if one wants to learn about the return to school superintendent updates to staff and families, and we'll get one out tomorrow after this meeting with the update. We always post it right on the district website, school newsletters, and then we are having a staff training on August 17th for all staff. Enough has changed that even though we did go back to school in the spring, there are enough changes that we want to make sure that we give staff training. So we'll have kind of a district message, and then logistics, how does this work at each school site? So in the spring, we had, each school had a return to school Google website. And as we went back to go revisit those with the principals, we found them not to be really that pertinent anymore, as kids are going to be in school the whole day. When we get this message out, everyone's going to be following the district plan. So there are not going to be that many site-specific changes on that. Next slide, please. Okay, so I want to just kind of go over the biggest picture is masks, masks, masks. And so as you see nationwide, that's the hot topic, but really it's the second most important thing that we can all do to keep ourselves safe. Vaccination is number one, but if we think about students less than 12 years old, they can't be vaccinated at this point. So masks matter a lot. All human beings will wear masks inside our school buildings. And I say that knowing that we will have some students that are not able to wear masks. Sometimes a student with a disability has a hard time keeping a mask on. That's a documented situation where those students will not wear masks. In extended school year, we did have some students that were not able to wear masks, but the very largest majority, all other students will be expected to wear masks, and all other adults will be expected to wear masks. There are situations outdoors where students are permitted to take their masks off. When students are eating, they will obviously have their masks off. We have some very, very large yards, and kids will need a break on the masks, but then there are some outdoor situations where you would want to keep it on. Principals feel more comfortable with the play structure because after not having been in a physical school for a long time, the play structure is going to be a very heavily interested area. And so we believe students should wear masks when they're in larger crowds. Another example might be at Ingrid B. Lacey during passing period. Even though they are outside, that does tend to get very congested. And so there's typically not 6 feet around you or even 3 feet. And so I think that they would recommend wearing masks in that situation as well. Hand washing matters. So while we do have a hand sanitizer available, readily available, hand washing is preferred, and that's the 20-second hand washing. I know that as vaccinations came up and we all started to feel a little more comfortable, we let go of that. There's, that's the third most important thing. So we really need to make sure that that's in place. Staying home when sick and getting tested, there will be very, very clear guidelines. If anyone has any symptoms around COVID, they have to stay home, whether that's a staff member or a student. And then there are some very specific requirements around when to return. Cleaning has changed, where initially in the pandemic, that was the most important thing, and we were going to wipe everything down several times. If there is not a documented infection, just daily cleaning, good daily cleaning, thorough daily cleaning is important, but it won't happen multiple times each day. Ventilation, as we talked about, is very important, opening windows and doors. And we will go at another slide and talk about kind of the response to poor air quality. That's actually, maybe I'll just address this right now. So in COVID, we want windows and doors open. In wildfire smoke, we want windows and doors closed. So we will communicate readily with parents about that, but it is very likely that at an AQI, air quality index, of about 150 is when we would look at canceling school. And so people would say that's very early, but when you administrators play this game where it's like, okay, you've got 3 multiple things happening. How would you deal with each one of them at one time? And if you think about exposure to wildfire smoke and being exposed to COVID, what you really most need to avoid is being exposed to COVID. So it'll be very likely that we may go home earlier. I know people want a very clear, if this, then this, if this, then that. And what I have to say is, not knowing when this is going to happen and not knowing what the COVID levels are. But I use that AQI, that air quality index of 150 is where we would be looking at that. And so that's why the communication and making sure that we have all of your appropriate contact numbers is going to be really important. The good news, bad news about wildfire smoke is it usually doesn't happen right away. You can smell it coming. It takes a little bit of time. It does go back and forth quickly, but we do typically have some ideas that it's coming. It's not something that happens overnight. What does happen overnight sometimes are power outages, making communication even more challenging. So we do definitely have some challenges in front of us. I will keep going. And so visitors is just as we had put prior to the direction from the state, is that we're going to hold off on having visitors on campus for the first month. And then after, when things are going well, we would ask for documentation of vaccination status. That was in our plan prior to it being required. So anyone that volunteers will have regular interaction with students, we would want to make sure that they are vaccinated. And then following, the next part is gatherings. And that's the part that's going to have a little bit more discretion and leeway this year. Last year, there were none, no gatherings, nothing, everything was virtual. And I think right now, while we're returning to school and the Delta variant is up, we will have back to school night virtually. But the principal and the PTO have some discretion, a PTO president have some discretion about gatherings. However, that would be consulting with the superintendent or a designee. So, we don't want to say none because we find that, you can gather outside safely, and it's an important part of the return to school, but we'll be initially a little bit conservative. Next slide, please. Oops. So what is different from last year is that there is no daily health questionnaire, but each employee and each family member checking the symptoms themselves. So you don't have to physically complete the survey, but checking for any symptoms. And in our plan are, the 10 most frequent symptoms for COVID. Masks are not required outside. I think, as requested by Mr. Harris, that we can, each school can, we don't want to have inconsistencies, but if we think about kids being in school over 6 hours, and then many of those kids going to childcare afterwards, that's a very long time to be in a mask. Kids do a great job in a mask, and they do a really, really great job, but we do have to give them a little bit of opportunity for breaks so that they can continue on. So they're not required outside, but anytime that students are or staff are in the middle of a crowd, we definitely want those masks on. So in terms of a response to a positive case, there is a very, very strong flow chart in terms of if there's a positive case, so mostly it would be employees, but it could be 7th and 8th graders at this point, that if you are vaccinated and there's a positive case, you do not need to be tested and you do not need to be quarantined unless you have symptoms. So the most important part is that you continue to look at symptoms. And then, if we think about where we were last year at this time, none of us were vaccinated. Now, 7th and 8th on IBL's campus, a very large number of students are vaccinated, and San Mateo County is, of the eligible individuals, so 12 and up, 90% of San Mateo County is vaccinated. So like I said, cleaning once a day is adequate. We talked about being restrictive, being a little bit tighter. There are no physical distancing requirements, but it is a layer of protection when possible. So when we do have the ability to spread out in a classroom or to be outside, we definitely want to take advantage of that, but there are no limitations, and we fully expect all students to return to school. So we're not limited to the size or how many students can fit in a classroom. The federal government this year is providing free breakfast and lunch. California was the first state to announce that we will continue that in the following year. And to the greatest extent possible, we will eat outside. Some of our bigger schools just cannot do that. Like, there are not enough outdoor spaces, or they'd have to start eating breakfast, or they'd have to start eating lunch at about 9:30. So we will be eating inside, but very strict guidelines around spacing. This is going to seem weird, but back in the old days, it would often take a kid 20-30 minutes to eat their lunch because they're talking to their friends, right? A whole lot more talking than lunch eating. And in this particular instance, we're going to work with kids in a very friendly way, but just to encourage them to stay focused on the eating part, so that then they can get up, go outside and play with their friends. There's kind of a fine balance, especially from the youngest kids who all they want to do is go out and play. But students that will be eating inside, we want to stay focused on eating. Might be a slightly quieter lunchroom, and then let's get outside and play. Last thing is that there are a couple things that I'm going to talk about in terms of, and it's clearly spelled out in the plan, and the spreadsheet is very helpful in there, is quarantining, modified quarantine, and the response to testing, the response testing that we're going to do. So I'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later. Next slide. So in our ever-changing world, we talked about what's different from last year. Well, what's different from yesterday? And the parts that are different from yesterday is that order from the state public health officer that all school workers provide verification of their vaccination status, and if unvaccinated, to undergo weekly COVID testing. So we were very fortunate last spring as we, as an organization, made a very deliberate decision to wait until all staff members have had the opportunity to be vaccinated, and that made a really big difference. Almost all of our staff are vaccinated. I can't tell you the percentage because we did have some employees leave, but we're well over 90% of our staff being vaccinated. Last spring, it was 95%. We intended to collect the documentation of this. We thought that there was one way that a employee could self-certify or say that I've been vaccinated, but they cannot in this situation. So that's an indication, when you get that indication from the state that they're looking at having all staff be vaccinated and saying how important that is, to me, that was a bit of an indicator like, oh, the state is looking at the Delta variant and that there may be some concern. And so what you have is always have the opportunity to put in additional layers of protection. And so I'm going to talk a little bit later about the 7 layers of protection. This summer, San Mateo County was doing well. And, I thought, okay, there are going to be positive cases, but we are just going to have response testing in those cases so that kids could do a modified quarantine. And a modified quarantine is that if there's a case in a class, a positive case in a class, and the students were wearing masks, that they can participate in what's called a modified quarantine. And so that would be for all asymptomatic individuals. So, and if somebody that doesn't have any symptoms, they were wearing a mask, can remain in school, in class, as long as 2 things. Number 1 is that they are tested twice a week. And the second piece of that is that they don't participate in extracurricular activities. So while that would be a real loss to the student and to the family, it would be better than not being able to be in school. So I thought we would do the rapid antigen test to help families do that, help provide that support. And then it really, when I look at the order from the state health officer and is the concern about the Delta variant, because so many people have been vaccinated, but yet students ages 2 through 11 are not able to be vaccinated. I would feel comfortable with adding kind of one more layer of protection, which is surveillance testing for students through a weekly pooled PCR test of students. And I'm just now learning about this from a superintendent in the county, shared that they've had very positive experience with it. And I sat in a webinar today. I'll explain a little bit more about what it is. I shared that information. I shared it by email with the principals today, but then I had a phone conversation with the presidents of LSEA and CSEA, and everybody understands the importance of building up our layers of protection. And any parent that did not want to participate in that could opt out of that, or they just wouldn't give consent for that. So there are options on that. But it's the Goldilocks. It's like, what's too little, what's too much, what's just right. This is a lot, a weekly pooled test, but it would initially take 10 minutes per classroom, and then it would take 5 minutes per classroom, and it would be administered by staff members of the company that is going to help us with that. So next slide, please. So there would be an online, so I have not completed the paperwork or the registration process. So I don't want people to say, where's my access code or where's my consent form? But just for parents' information is that there's an online consent form, and you have to fill out all of the aspects of that, and that there's an access code that comes from the school. And so parents would fill that out online. We will follow up with parents. Again, we're being very transparent, is that parents do not have to do the testing in this way. So that is a little bit of a concern sometimes for other parents or for teachers. But you know, what we really want to do is talk to people about how this provides a layer of just security, is that this is one more layer of protection, and make sure that we message it in that way. Next slide, please. So what we have to remember is that we have really now at this point 7 layers, and we've talked about this for a long time. What we didn't have last year at this time is the vaccine. We didn't have that for adults, and we didn't have that for 11 and 12-year-old, or I'm sorry, for 7th and 8th graders. Masks were, if you think about it, when we first started the pandemic, we didn't wear masks, but masks are number 2 on the list of importance and are going to really help us get through this. And we are going to reinforce that and make sure that that all students are wearing them safely. So number 3 is ventilation. And as you can see, the windows open in that, making sure, and it's really diluting any virus that might be inside the classroom. So you want to open windows, open doors, get an airflow on there. And so that's an important piece of safety. Hand washing, staying at home sick. The number 6 is testing. And as I said, I went into this initial presentation and I wrote the plan that we were only going to do response testing, but in only 5 short days, it is time to think about one more layer, which would be surveillance testing of students. And then there's one more super important part. Next slide, please. Which is contact tracing. And so if your child has not been exposed, you may not have had the opportunity to meet Yolanda Pranza. She's an administrative assistant in the student services department, and she plays a very important role. She is our connection with the San Mateo County Health Office, and anyone that has had a positive case or been with a close contact, Yolanda is typically on the phone with them and asking a lot of questions. And I can't tell you how supportive people have been in terms of sharing information, information about positive tests, asking really personal questions. And they've been great about that. That's a super important part of us keeping the virus outside of our school. You know, one of the things we have to keep in mind where we are right now is that we are not going to have positive, so we got through all the way to June 30th with no positive cases. We did have a positive case at extended school year, as Nicole had said, and all of the students in the classroom were quarantined, and we were able to extend extended school year by 6 more days. We wouldn't be able to do that in a school setting. And so we do really want to keep everyone away from quarantining to the greatest degree that we can. But that's super important in terms of staying safe. Next slide, please. So like I said, in the spring, over 97% of our 300 staff members were vaccinated. This was written this weekend, was that we'll be verifying the staff vaccination. I do want to remind people that vaccination staff is private information for both students and staff. And so, you know, you can ask your friends, but you can't ask your teacher. And you also, we will be, after school gets started, we will be asking parents to provide information on their the students that are eligible for vaccination. We would like that information, but that's going to come through the district office. Just again, because that is private information, and we wouldn't want students to be treated differently because they've not been vaccinated or been vaccinated, right? Like we see, as sometimes COVID brings out the best and worst of what happens in the world, is we would never want anyone to be discriminated on vaccination status. And so that is information that we will keep private. It is very important because the response to a positive case is dependent on that, but we want to keep that information to the degree we can private. Next slide, please. I don't think I have to tell anybody how important it is to wear a mask, but one of the things that is important, and we see even with the preschoolers, is they know how to wear a mask, and just continuing to reinforce that. And like I said before, is for when you get to the end of your mask wearing ability, being able to go outside the classroom and take a break. Even for the biggest kids, say if at IBL between classes, if they're going to wear their mask in while passing, if they need to get to class and then take a break, they could go outside and take a break with their mask. So that's going to be very, very important as we move forward. Next slide. So this is the district to-do list. There's a couple things. So as we were implementing, so Binax is just a simple antigen test. It's rapid response. That's the one that I thought that we were going to do. But then somebody told me about this pooled PCR testing, and the state health officer made that piece around employee vaccinations. I just felt like it was time to look a little bit further. So the pooled PCR testing is that in a class, someone will come in, give all the students their swab. Students will do 4 swabs in the right nostril, 4 swabs in the left nostril. They'll take this, they'll walk it up and stick it in the vial, and 25 tests will be tested at one time. And if there are any positive tests, then that's followed up with an antigen test for all the people that were in that file. So it's really a very economical way of doing it. All costs are covered. I believe it's through federal money that's being funneled through the state, and the state has chosen to spend that because they know that testing is a really important piece of bringing kids back to school safely. We all know that, it was a big lift for us to get back to school, and we, in our hybrid way, it was very, very safe, but it was the right size of the step. But this is a much bigger step with all students back. And so that extra layer of protection is really important. So after school gets started, we will have the parent consent forms. They will be online, and then we'll get that up and rolling shortly after school gets started. So it may not be in place the very first day of school, but it's very likely the second week of school that will be in place. We need to make sure that so one of the challenges with free stuff is that sometimes it comes with staff, but sometimes it doesn't. And we've talked for a long time about some classified staff that may be able to also help with that rapid response testing. Another benefit of us being able to do the rapid response testing is as we go on a big, as we get ready to go to outdoor ed, we could do that so that students would go into outdoor ed without a positive case. So we're communicating site procedures, continuing staff training and communication. Every meeting I'm in, this is almost all I talk about. It will be very refreshing when there are other topics to talk about, but we'll continue that work now. And then back to school nights. So the back to school nights are set. I will get dates and times. We have the dates for back to school night, but I just need to get the times. And as I said, those will all be held virtually this year. So I think the next opportunity for any board discussion or any questions. And we could also see if there were public comment.
I don't think I see any public comment requests on this. Any questions? Trustee Villalobos? You're muted.
Thank you. Mine are just, some are for clarification. What does it look like? Let's just have a scenario that a student tests positive in a class and maybe 4 or 5 other students, and they have to quarantine at home. What does it look like for their work that they're taking home? Is there somebody who's following up with them with instructions or questions? Or are they just sick? Because I'm just saying this because my daughter came down with COVID and she's in college and she was really sick. But her professor would not give her any extra time, you know, and she was in bed sleeping. And so I'm just wondering, how are we going to make sure that that student is getting the material that they need and that they understand it while they're in quarantine?
So you bring up a lot of really good things. So one of the things, and we'll almost get this picture of this, is that there's a really, really good spreadsheet or flow chart, and it's in the plan around just the response. So one is, again, just depending on the age or the vaccination, the ability to be vaccinated, that does matter in terms of the response. So if a student is positive, they do need to stay at home. I think we need to be really clear is we don't want the schoolwork or the need to connect or be online to get in the way of somebody healing. Like when you're sick, you have to be sick. And I think that's, we have seen how the flexibility and the way that we have used different tools and that we've caught up in a bunch of different ways. I do think we need to think about how is it that we're going to support students that are well, that are quarantined, right? So how will they get their work? I don't have an easy answer on that. There is an opportunity with independent study that they could go to independent study for beyond 3 days. So they could go from 3 to 15 days. But what we found in the spring is, especially as it was time to come back and we offered full year distance learning, people don't like to disconnect from their class, right? They say, I want to be with my teacher, I want to do, but we are not going to do zooming into the classroom. And the reason being is that when you have a full class of students, your full attention, especially during a pandemic, needs to be on the students that are in there. So we will have plans for how students will make up that work. Like, for example, if a student were typically ill, that the teacher takes that work and sets it aside and put the homework assignments and that those are communicated with the student. They could do that while they're at home, as long as they're well enough to do it, but there certainly would be some makeup time that they could turn that in. Did I answer that question, Laverne?
Yes. The independent study was interesting, but there might be, just looking forward, there might be somebody who's sick, really sick, and can't do the work for a week or two and may have to catch up.
And we really need to, so one of the things we'll be talking about is when we talk about school attendance, but we're going to be talking about school attendance with a COVID lens. Like, let's acknowledge that this is really hard. And for some young kids, this is going to be the sickest they have ever been. And so, finishing the work is not the highest priority.
And then I had a question about the crowds. When you were just giving the presentation, I was wondering if in instances where the kids are bunched together, for instance, like fire drills, will they be wearing their masks? Because I know that fire drills happen maybe once a month and the kids are directly behind each other in a straight line. And so I was just curious if masks would be worn during the fire drills, if that's one of the instances of crowds.
Yeah, I think the good news about most fire drills is that we know those are coming and people can be warned about that. But principals are going to avoid situations where there are large crowds, right? Like there are going to be some that we can control and some that we can't control. We know that we need to do drills, but how do you do it so that you really can use all the space that you have available to you? Can you really spread out? Could we put, I think about Ocean Shore where they tend to line up on the blacktop. Could some of those classes now go up on the field so that there's a little bit more space there? It is interesting when you have to look at things with a different lens, but we will do that. We did a good job of the return to school. So I think we just have to put our space. Yeah.
And then I just had another question about outdoor ed. Because, on the news, there's been camps that have canceled altogether because of positive cases. So, I thought that was a great idea, testing them before they go. But then I'm also wondering if, is it Jones Gulch they're going to? I'm wondering if they have their own policies on if the students need to be tested and if we have to follow them.
We would absolutely, actually, Will is going to do a presentation on outdoor ed right after this, and he's going to talk about the safety policies.
Thank you.
Good segue. Other questions?
Trustee Doggett, do you have any questions?
No questions.
Okay, and I don't have any questions.
Okay.
So,
This is a plan that doesn't need to be approved. But as I wrote it this weekend, now I need to make the adjustment for how we're going to do that testing. And so I will update that. We will always try to keep updated information on the front page of the website. So the county wants a link to where it is posted on our website, just so that they have all of the plans for each of the schools in the county.
okay, so that'll be easy for all the parents to access then.
Absolutely. We'll update that tomorrow.
Okay, so since this is information only, we can go on to item B, which is outdoor education overnight field trip. Will Lucy.
Hi, it is with great pleasure that I present this because this is all happy news. Our outdoor education program will happen for the 2021-2022 school year. And I just wanted to go through a couple of things around outdoor education. First, as it's always been, it is funded by our parcel tax. I think that needs to always be highlighted that our parcel tax fund is funding outdoor ed. This year, we were fortunate to be able to send both our sixth graders, who were fifth graders last year, and our present fifth graders. The sixth graders will go in the fall of 21-22, and the fifth graders will go in the spring. The outdoor education, as of now, is planned to be in person at Camp Jones Gulch. There has been a lot of things that has happened because they did not have the in-person last year. There's been some construction. They fixed the access roads. I remember when I took up my class years ago, that access road up was a pain to drag your suitcases and all your stuff up. That access road has been paved and repaved. And then there's also, they were fortunate enough to not be affected by the fires these past year, but there has been some work done to prevent, for fire prevention up there, up and around the camp. There are more cabins there's more space, which equals more students. The in-person will follow the CDPH guidance and the pandemic recovery framework. In talking to San Mateo County, they said that's one of the things that many people do not understand or should understand is that they, as a school, as part of the school program, they follow the same guidelines as a school site would. So our safety plan is consistent with their safety plan. Obviously, there's some uniqueness because of the outdoor ed and the camp environment, but it follows those same guidelines. These are the dates of the outdoor education program. And like I said, the sixth graders will be going in the fall. So I've color coded this so you can see that the schools like Cabrillo is green, and their sixth graders are going in October, the end of October, and their fifth graders are going in May. And the other ones are color coded that way. So again, we have them kind of grouped around October, November, and early December, and then we have kind of a one in January, and then the rest of them are in April or May. Things are changing quickly, just as you learned from the last presentation. But here are a couple of things that I did learn. The requirements for COVID negative test within a 4-day window prior to the Monday that the student gets on the bus. So that is one big piece that's in place. And then a requirement of health check as the kids get on the bus, which will include a temperature check. Students will be in cohorts, meaning that they'll ride in sections of the buses together, and they'll be in the same group as they're in their cabin groups. And then these will be the students who they will be primarily be with during the week. So their groupings will stay consistent throughout their time there, from the bus to the cabins to the the times they go out on hikes and stuff like that. They'll be with those particular students. Students will need to, as at school, students will need to wear masks indoors, not necessarily outdoors, and not while sleeping, which I thought was interesting. That wasn't a requirement. Cabins will have the same level of filters as classrooms have. So they're, again, following the guidelines around how to circulate and vent the air within the cabins. If students should become ill, we will have rapid antigen tests to test students, quarantining and sending student home with the parent if a positive test is detected. All outdoor education staff is vaccinated. There are enhanced cleaning protocols in place. Students will, for the most part, eat outdoors when they're able to. And then if the school has an outbreak prior to outdoor education and literally can't come, there is a contingency plan where they will work with the district and school leaders to provide school-based on-site instruction, online opportunities, and possibly daily field trips. So those are just some of them, but I do want to reiterate this, that outdoor ed and the outdoor ed staff are following the guidelines and the safety plans that are consistent with the schools. Obviously, there are some that are specific to an outdoor camp environment, but they are following the same guidelines as all the schools are following and school districts are following.
Okay, for questions, Trustee Villalobos, do you have any questions?
Not right now, not that I can think of. I mean, it seems like they've got a good plan.
Okay, and Trustee Dargan?
Also, I'm sorry. Also, I meant to mention that all of this information and their plan will be posted on their website. As of my talk with Karen Newsty, it should be sometime this week. They should have those plans up.
Maybe what we will do is we will link to their plan, since we have such a large contingent going.
Okay, and Trustee Doggett, did you have any questions?
No questions.
Okay, I don't have any questions. I'm just really glad that we're able to send the sixth graders, the ones that were not able to go last year. I think it's wonderful that they were able to accommodate us to send that many kids. And this is an item an action item that we need to vote on. So do I have a motion to approve the outdoor education overnight field trip?
I will make the motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, and Kelly, can you take the roll call vote?
Trustee Burdell,
Yes.
Trustee Doggett,
Yes.
Trustee Villalobos.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes 3-0.
Okay, and item C, update on trustee replacement. Dr. Olson?
I have that one. Mr. Lucy, there's a presentation for this one, a one-slide presentation. Could you get that off the agenda?
Yes, if you just can give me a second, I'll get it up there as quickly as I can. I'm switching.
I'll start talking. So we had intended for the applications to be, or the candidate interest form to be submitted by the 9th of August. And I did not get the ad in the Tribune. And so we got it in this week, and we're going to show you a copy of it. But it got in this week. And so we extended the deadline for the submission of interest to the 16th of August. So August 16th at the end of the workday, so 4:30. And people can either submit it online, or they can email it to Kelly, or they can hand in a copy of that. So I'll give it one more second. We don't even necessarily have to show it. It was just a slide that showed the ad that we put in the Pacifica Tribune. Are there any questions about that? About the, so what will happen, I will talk to President Burdell tomorrow, and we'll look for, we'll have two people review the candidate statements, and then we'll figure out how many we should interview. We have a date, so next Thursday, school starts on Wednesday, next Thursday that we will meet. There are just a few orders of business that we need to do prior to, and then we would do the interviews. We do select the candidate right there, and the candidate that's selected is given the oath of office, and they resume their duties that night. So, Liber?
Well, I'm just wondering how many candidates do we have so far?
So far, we have 3. We're really delighted. There we go. There's our Pacifica Tribune ad. Is that we just spelled out why we have an opening, and we have an opening because Trustee Steele resigned, and that it's the opening is until November of 2022, and then exactly how one would go about submitting their interest form, and then that we're going to have the special board meeting beginning at 6 p.m. on the 19th. So we have 3 candidates, as far as I know. Last I knew, there were 3.
Okay. Trustee Doggett, did you have any questions?
No questions.
Okay, and this is information only. So thank you, Dr. Olson. And item number 6, board bylaws, board policies, and administrative regulations. Also, Dr. Olson.
Okay, so we have a long history of reviewing board policies, and we have a year and a half of policies that we need to catch up on. This is not that. This is the most important thing that we need to do to start school. And as I called out in my presentation, where distance learning has sunset, what the state has opened up is for folks not able to return to school is the independent study option. There are many districts that don't have this option, and it hasn't been a part of what they've done. So they're scrambling to create programs, or they're looking at programs. We're not. We have an Kent award-winning homeschool program that's been in place for 22 years. And we're using that to provide independent study. However, there were just a few things that weren't in our policy that we're going to need to tweak. And so some of those things include Synchronous instruction for students TK through 3rd grade, and that would happen daily. That there is daily interaction in 4th through 8th grade, so an opportunity for kids to interact with other kids, and then asynchronous instruction once a week for 4th through 8th grade. Predominantly, our asynchronous instruction is going to be around social emotional learning, and it will be a smaller period of time. It might be 15 or 20 minutes a day. It won't be a very extensive period of time. Because we have a homeschool program that's very much set up for kids to do a designed program that's set up for them. So a few things around this. So we talked about the asynchronous learning. There are some aspects of this is that students that have been in the program for at least 15 days, after the parent indicates that they want to return to a brick and mortar classroom, we need to do that within 5 days. That is definitely something that's new to our policy, because in our previous home study program, we said you were signing up for the whole year. And obviously there were a few changes to that, but we used to say, if you're in homeschool, you're there for the whole year. And that is a requirement that has to change with this. We would provide, as if a family does not have a Chromebook or a hotspot, if they need it, just like in our classrooms, if they need it to do their work, we would also provide that. So just 2 other things that I wanted to bring to your attention is that so we need to hold a public hearing, and the public hearing needs to have 10 days worth of notice. So as we were getting the board agenda ready for this meeting, I missed that 10 days. So we're going to do that again on the 19th. And it's kind of like public comment, only we hold a very specific place, and it just has to start at a specific time. And in our public notice or our public hearing, one of the things that we will discuss is we've always had, as the teachers have assigned the work, students have had 2 weeks to complete that work. In CSBA's policy, they recommend 1 week. But I think that in our hearing, because it has worked as 2 weeks, a family and a teacher can always agree to hand it in more often, but just to make sure that that's working for families, because they really did like the flexibility. So unless I'm hearing direction from the board or otherwise, we are going to say that after the work has been assigned, it needs to be returned within 2 weeks, with the understanding that the teacher and the parent and the student can agree to something even more restrictive. So are there any questions on the board policy or the administrative regulation? This one is just for your information, and I wanted to get it out in front of the public so that people understood that we were going to be revising our policy to meet the laws. Laverne?
This is more like I don't know if it's a typo or not, but it's on this, let me see. There's actually 2 of them. It's in this one.
Okay.
And if you flip the page to page 2, under CF 5146, it says married, pregnant, or parenting students.
Oh, we missed that one.
I know that, some students could be pregnant, but married, I don't think. So that's here. I can give it to you afterwards or whatever.
You could just snap a photo of it. That would help.
Yeah. And then the other one is from this one. It's kind of the same. It says CF C146.1, high school graduation requirements. So, I don't know if we talk about that at the end of 8th grade, so it's in there as well. So I can just snap those and then email them to you.
That would be great, because on the CSBA one, I did cross off the things that we're talking about the students beyond 8th grade and the graduation. So I appreciate that if I missed them. There are a lot of moving parts on that. So if we missed them, we appreciate that. We'll bring it back to the public hearing and fixed up. Thank you.
Trustee Doggett, did you have any questions?
No questions.
Okay, so I think this item is just for information at this point and will be brought back for us to vote on the 19th.
And for parents' knowledge is that after this meeting, we'll be sending out the link so that they can sign up. So it's called the intent to enroll, and just as families do enroll in the home study program, that they would be associated with the home study program, which means that they would no longer be associated with their school. And so it's a separate program. And so they would relinquish the spot in their homeschool so that they could join the homeschool program. So we want to always be transparent about that so that people are not surprised by that.
So that's my understanding. If they request to go back, then it depends on what opening is available.
Yes, we would follow the same district procedures for enrolling in. So they would go through the waitlist procedures for that.
Okay. All right, thank you. So item 7, future agenda items.
Future agenda items. Okay, we have a busy schedule. We're a light crew today, but we definitely have a busy schedule. So make sure that you pace yourself on this. So next week, we do need to do the public hearing for independent study and administrative regulations. If there are any things that I need approval from you regarding any testing agreements that come up, I would bring those at this period of time. And then right after that is when we would do the interview and appointment process. So we'll start at 6 o'clock and then interview a reasonable number of people. And so that's the special board meeting. Then the following week, we have a board work study session with Nicole Anderson and Deborah Wright Keys around equity. And then we come back on September 1st. There were some items on the LCAP that San Mateo County Office of Ed has asked us to review with you and bring back to you. So we will bring that on September 1st. Want to give you an update on opening of school. I feel like we have given you the update on what the return to school looks like COVID lens, but we'd really also like to talk about some of the things that we're excited about. There are some really great things. And so we want to share that information with you. I think Kelly and I will be able to look at our long-term plan on how to get those board policies in. We probably won't get to board policies, but how are we going to get those in? We want to have that finish up that conversation on board compensation. We will give you an update on workforce housing. As Jefferson Union and Jefferson Elementary are having success, we want people to know that we are still working through our workforce housing with the city of Pacifica, and that is still going to happen. So we're excited about that. And then CC Ming, if you have walked past the ESS building, she is working diligently to get things done, and we've had a lot of success this summer and big projects. And so on September 1st, we'd love for CC to do a presentation on the bond presentation. And then CSBA has directors at large, African American, American Indian, and county. County, because we wouldn't be eligible. We're not county, but there are. There's that director at large position, and if we'd like to nominate someone, we would do so at that time. It's due, I think, mid-October, but it's good that we talk about that at that point. That's an extremely full agenda, so I don't want to say, is there more? But anything that I have forgotten maybe might be any requests.
That's probably a full plate for the next month or so until we get another person.
Okay, very good. Well, I thank everyone for their diligence in getting started with the first meeting. And I think what I can say is that folks are really relieved about being able to return to school fully. And we're having our school secretaries meeting tomorrow, and I'm really excited to be working with them We're going to do some professional development, some of the work that we did around family engagement. If you think about the things that came out of the pandemic that were really great, is that before we went into the pandemic, is I wanted parents to be our partners with partners with us around their students' learning. Well, they've had plenty of opportunity to do that and really know their kids as learners. And so we want to just keep moving forward on that. So we're really excited about that, excited about getting the meeting started. And so I thank the trustees for their leadership and getting us started back at school last year and getting us we're in a very strong position right now with so many of our staff members vaccinated. And as both Jonathan and Nicole started off with, is people feel really good about the work that we've done and the work that we've done together. And so I think we are going to have, there are going to be, some very difficult and challenging things. This is not the school that many of us thought that we were going to be doing, but you know what? We're just in the last leg of this marathon and we can do it. And we have to be really smart about the decisions that we make and, think about what's the most important thing for kids at all times. So thank you very much for your leadership. And we look forward to starting the school year.
Thank you. We'll adjourn the meeting at 8:22.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.